If your pay lands in your account and then suddenly disappears like pizza at a party, then this video is for you. Today I'll be going through my exact payday routine, including how I organize my money, pay myself first, split my money into different accounts, review my expenses, and stop money from vanishing. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Queenie and I'm a personal finance creator. I have a license to give general financial advice, but keep in mind that anything that we talk about in this video or on this channel is general advice only and not personal financial advice. You can read my full financial services guide in the description. So sit back, relax, grab a drink of your choice. Today I'm drinking this caffeine-free tea and let's dive in. So the first thing that I do is pay myself first. The biggest thing that I've learned with my finances is the concept of paying myself first. There's a famous quote from Warren Buffett which says, "Don't save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving." And I think it's so true. I also personally think that money has its own Parkinson's law attached to it. By the way, Parkinson's law is basically that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. And I think the same applies to money as well. I really saw Parkinson's law the other day in action. Our swimming class changed from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. So you'd think that that means that we have an extra 30 minutes to get ready. But in reality, we just took longer to get ready. And instead of being ready earlier, we just arrived on time for our 9:30 a.m. class. And I think that money can also work the same way. When you get paid more, you might get paid a bonus or your salary might increase. So you might think that you'll be saving more money because of this. But because of Parkinson's law, suddenly all of your expenses also rise with it. And at the end of the day, you don't really end up saving more money at all. So that's why I think it's really important to have a payday routine and to be mindful of these things. And especially this very first step, which is to pay yourself first. I already roughly know what my expenses are each month. And I also have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved in cash in a bank account. So I already know how much I can invest each month without ever being short on money by the end of the month. My partner and I are self-employed and we work full-time on this YouTube channel and also our budgeting app Billroo. We pay ourselves a salary and each month 20% of our salary is automatically invested without us even having to think about it. We also have other sources of income like dividends, selling things on Facebook Marketplace, rental income from our investment property, cashback, and referrals. But we like to look at these sources of income at the end of the month because it's not as consistent as our salary income. And then at the end of the month, we can work out exactly how much we can invest of this income and how much of this income we want to spend on things that make us happy. Keep in mind that we all have different salaries and different risk profiles. So the amount of money that you save and invest each month really just depends on your own personal situation. This is just an example. And if you're wondering, the app that I use to track my income and expenses is called Billroo. My partner and I co-founded this tool and we've built it with our team. And honestly, since being able to use this app, I never have to worry where my money is going because I always know exactly where it's going. And if you would like to try Billroo for yourself, I've got a link in the description below to a 14-day free trial. So the next step is putting money into my different offset accounts. I love having offset accounts because basically the money that sits here offsets the interest that I pay on my mortgage. And if you do have a mortgage, these offset accounts could work even better than a high interest savings account. Because you're technically saving interest, not earning interest, you usually don't need to pay tax on the savings. Whereas with a high interest savings account, since you are earning interest, you may have to pay tax on that interest earned. So we have a few different offset accounts set up with different purposes. As soon as we get paid, the money lands straight into our main offset account. And this is the account where our mortgage, bills, and everyday spending comes out of. We also have a separate offset account where our emergency fund sits. An emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved in cash. We personally have closer to 6 months because we have a mortgage, we have a baby, and we're also self-employed. So we like to have a bit more of a buffer. We used to keep our emergency fund lumped together with our main offset account, but what we found was sometimes we would accidentally dip into our emergency savings without even realizing it. So we find having a separate offset account where our emergency fund sits works out a lot better for us because we're not tempted to accidentally spend the money in our emergency fund. We also have another offset account which is attached to our investment property, and each month we automatically transfer some extra money into that offset account to pay for our investment property expenses, such as the mortgage and any other property related expenses. We also have another offset account for taxes. So if we get paid any additional streams of income outside of our salary, for example, referral income, I transfer 37% into this taxes account so that I can hold that money for the taxes that I need to pay on it. Generally, not every income outside of our salary is taxable because some things may be classified as hobbies, for example, selling things on Facebook Marketplace and getting cash back is generally seen as hobby income, so we only do this for taxable sources of income like referral income, just to make sure we have set aside our tax money. This has honestly been so helpful to have these different accounts, because that way, since we know exactly what that money will be used for, we're less likely to spend it. And I'm curious to hear from you, what different bank accounts do you have set up? Let me know in the comments. So this is probably the most important part of my payday routine, and that's reviewing my expenses from the previous month to see where my money went. The first time I did this, it's honestly pretty shocking to see just how much those little expenses really do add up. But I am happy to say, since I have been doing this for quite a while, my expenses don't really surprise me anymore. And I feel like I have a lot less of those months where my spending really shocks me. But every so often, I still have a month where I spend way too much money on a certain category. And this is where having an app like Billroo can really come in handy. Billroo connects to all of my bank accounts with open banking, so it doesn't require me to share my bank ID or password in order to get the data, so it's a lot more secure. Unfortunately, non-bank lenders like Amex aren't added to open banking yet, but they are on the roadmap to be added to open banking by the end of this year or early next year. And for my Amex transactions, I download them as a CSV and then upload it into Billroo. All of my transactions are categorized. If there are any that are incorrect, I can simply recategorize it, and then it will find other similar transactions that I can update it to, so I can recategorize anything that's incorrect in the same step. And once I have updated any categories, the AI will start to learn from that, and it will apply that same category to future similar transactions. So every month I love sitting down and actually drilling down to see exactly where my money went last month. So these are our expenses from last month. Our travel category was a lot higher than usual because we did go on an overseas trip last month. We went to Boracay, and I can drill down and see the subcategories here and how much we spent in each category. Childcare was a bit more expensive last month, so that's definitely worth checking just to make sure that all the payments are on track. But sometimes there is a delay in the previous month and we might pay a bit extra the following month to make up for it. So one thing to check. We had a pretty big month for gifts because it was my birthday, and we also bought some gifts for friends. Groceries was under budget this month. Eating out was over budget, and mortgage fees was over budget because we did refinance our mortgage to get a better deal. And things like the gym, Pablo's hobby, my self-care, baby expenses, entertainment, and clothes were all under budget this month. Something that I also love doing is asking the Billroo AI about my spending from last month to see if there are any things that jumped out at them. So let me show you this in action. This can be really helpful, especially if you're not quite sure where to look, and sometimes it highlights things I may have missed. What are some interesting things to point out based on my spending from last month? Thanks. So overall, the AI noticed some pretty similar things, which is really interesting. If I have noticed that I've overspent in a particular category, for example, in March, I spent over $600 on clothes. And honestly, I didn't even realize I had spent that much until I actually checked my expenses from the previous month. And it really made me realize how all of those little expenses really do add up. So the next month, I decided to do a no spend month on clothes to help me reset my spending. I love doing a no spend month, especially if I have noticed that I've been overspending in a particular category, because it really helps me get my spending back on track. I also love reviewing my extra sources of income to see how much money I earned from additional sources of income, like dividends, cashback, Facebook Marketplace, or referrals. And what I like doing is the invest 50%, spend 50% rule. So whatever additional money I earn, let's say for example, I sell something on Facebook Marketplace for $200, I'll invest $200 and then spend $200 on whatever I like. And this helps me feel like I'm making progress towards my money goals, but still enjoying it too. One thing that has been an absolute game changer for my finances is reviewing my net worth every single month as part of my payday routine. I created this free net worth tracker spreadsheet that you can use to track your net worth. And I honestly use this spreadsheet every single month to see where my net worth is, and it really keeps me motivated. It's also amazing to see just how much our net worth has really grown over the last few years, and how the beginning is often much harder, and how getting to our first $100,000 took such a long time, but then it just gets easier and easier because of time and compound interest. So if you would like to start tracking your net worth, I've got the net worth tracker down in my description below. I think it's also really important to make sure that you keep some fun spending in your payday routine. Because I've been reviewing my income and expenses for quite a while, I have a pretty good idea of the purchases that really brought me the most amount of joy and the purchases that brought me the least amount of joy. For example, I've noticed that I'm somebody who gets a huge amount of joy from spending on things like travel and experiences, but I don't get that much enjoyment from spending on material possessions, like fancy clothes and things like that. So because Pablo and I have noticed that we are people that love spending money on travel, we've decided to intentionally reduce the budget on some areas that we don't really value as much. For example, we do set our eating out budget quite low compared to a lot of people. Instead of going out for big meals, we tend to usually do snacks. So for example, we'll go out for a coffee, or we'll go out for a croissant, or maybe we'll go out for a gelato or a bubble tea instead of spending around $100 on a meal out at a restaurant. This still helps us scratch that itch of being able to eat out, but it doesn't cost as much as going for a full meal out. And with that money that we save on eating out, we like to reallocate it to our travel budget. So we spend quite a bit of money on travel every year, but to us, it's totally worth it. I also personally have a beauty budget that allows me to spend guilt-free on beauty purchases and self-care. And Pablo also has some categories just for him. So he has a category for personal care and his haircuts, and he's also able to spend guilt-free on his hobbies every month. So I think it's important while you do this payday routine to actually look through your expenses and to really understand which purchases brought you the most joy and which things you want to keep spending more money on and which things you want to spend less money on, so that you can reallocate that money into things that you really enjoy. The next step is reducing big and recurring purchases. Every month, I love looking at things that I can reduce for the next month, especially when it comes to recurring subscriptions. So I like looking to make sure that my mortgage is competitive. Although I don't usually switch this every month, I usually like to look after maybe a year just to make sure it's competitive. But I love looking at things like insurance, phone plans, internet, energy bills, streaming services, subscriptions, gym memberships, car payments, or anything else that really comes out regularly. It's good to focus on the big yearly subscriptions that you can really reduce and will keep on saving you money throughout the whole year. For example, potentially refinancing your mortgage to get a better interest rate, or switching your insurance or electricity providers to make sure you're getting a better deal. But it's also important to look at those smaller recurring subscriptions just to make sure that you're not overpaying. For example, whenever we're signing up to a new TV streaming service, when I'm subscribing, I actually like to cancel the subscription straight away, so that way I don't forget to cancel it. I also like keeping one streaming subscription open at a time. So for example, at the moment we have Netflix, and then maybe next month we might get Disney Plus, instead of having 5 different streaming subscriptions at the same time. And the great thing about this is the lower your fixed expenses are, the more breathing room you have. So it's not about cutting out everything fun. The goal is to stop paying for things that we don't really value, so that money can go towards things that we really do value. Remember, if you would like a dashboard to help you look through your finances so that you can clearly see exactly how much money is going in and how much money is going out and which categories might be creeping up, the app that I use is called Billroo. I've got a link in my description below to a 14-day free trial. So here's a recap of my payday routine. The first thing I do is pay myself first and invest 20% of my pay each month. Then I move money into my different offset accounts. I have an emergency fund offset account, a property expenses offset account, a tax offset account, and an offset account where my pay is deposited into and all of my bills and expenses come out of. After that, I review my expenses from the previous month to see where my money went and if there are any categories that I could potentially improve on for next month. Then I like to review my net worth just to make sure that it's moving in the right direction. And then I look through my additional streams of income to see how much money I earned, how much money I can put towards my investments, and how much money I can use towards fun expenses to just enjoy life, using the invest 50, spend 50% rule. And finally, I look out for those recurring expenses to see if there are any subscriptions that I don't really use anymore and could cancel, or to see if there are any fixed expenses that I could review to get a better deal. Keep in mind, this is just what I personally do, and your payday routine doesn't have to look identical to mine. This is just to give you an idea of what your payday routine could look like. But I personally think progress beats perfection every single time. You can always make adjustments to your payday routine and then learn and adapt over time. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. Your secret word is payday. So write me a comment below with the word payday in it, just so that I know you watched this video all the way through. Thank you, bye.